And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
45!
Oh my god!
Decollage!
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
The methane would be igniting the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good early morning. You are taking a live look right now at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Yes, a launch finally once again from Florida as SpaceX gets ready to launch the Starlink 10-59 mission. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I will be your host for this evening / early morning hopeful launch today. And of course, it won't be just me that you'll be listening to. You will also hear the dulcet tones of Mr. Max Evans out in the field. Max, how's it going?
Well, it is a rather early morning here, everybody. As per usual, it's very on brand for these early morning Starlink missions. But it is our first launch back in almost a couple of weeks. But we can talk more about that here in a few minutes. But it is good to be back, greeted with some very clear skies, albeit some very windy conditions, as you can probably tell by the camera shake. But it is good to be back.
It really is good to be back. It has been a hot while, and pushing the buttons, pulling the levers today is Carson behind the scenes. So expect some fun soundboards and be taking care of all of the buttons for us tonight. So let's kick things off here with the usual. Let me just first point out the number of satellites tonight. This is going to be similar to your ordinary Starlink, but of course, as always, this is not your ordinary Starlink mission, as it has been quite a while since we have had one from the Cape. There will be 28 satellites launching today in the typical northeastern trajectory that we are used to seeing during this summertime / fall time period for SpaceX and for these particular Starlink V2 mini satellites. One of the big concerns, of course, you may have noticed the window opened a couple hours ago and the start time has been delayed a bit, is the weather. Max, what's been going on with the weather out there?
Yeah, it certainly has been a focal point of conversation in the past couple of weeks because we have had both Hurricane Umberto and then also Tropical Storm Imelda off of the east coast of Florida out in the Atlantic Ocean. While both systems were able to curve north and able to avoid any sort of direct landfall on Florida, we still certainly felt the residual effects of very high swells and very high winds and, of course, lots and lots of rain. For tonight, the forecast from the 45th Weather Squadron based over at the Patrick Space Force Base is forecasting only a 35% chance of a weather-related violation. So, in the grand scheme of things, that is a rather good-looking forecast. But honestly, being here, boots on the ground, and feeling the wind hitting my face right now, it is very gusty, I think. Last we checked, the winds were gusting anywhere from 25 to 30, sometimes over 30 miles an hour. And that is right on the threshold of what Falcon 9 can do with a full load while still being able to be recovered. So would certainly be on the line in terms of what Falcon can handle if they do opt to try and fly tonight. But it is SpaceX. This is a Starlink mission, and then these are certainly the missions that they use to gather further data to see what Falcon 9 can really handle, as they are still on the road to certifying Falcon 9 Block 5 first stage boosters towards 40 flights. And this booster in particular, segueing into that, is booster B1090. And by the grand scheme of things, this is only its 8th flight, so I guess by comparison to a lot of the fleet, especially here in Florida, where a lot of them are either at or above 20 flights, this is still a pretty young booster. So, and its flight history includes the likes of CRS-33, O3B mPOWER E, Crew 10, Bandwagon 3, O3B mPOWER D, and only 2 previous Starlink missions. Following a nominal first stage burn, it will hopefully be meeting the drone ship a Shortfall of Gravitas about 8.5 minutes into flight, and the vessel helping out in recovering the fairings out of the water tonight, out of the Atlantic Ocean, is Doug. So at least on paper, it is a rather business as usual mission for SpaceX. However, as we said earlier, the weather remains the main focal point of conversation. And based off of some conversation we were having before going live, just based on the wind shear, the wind velocity, and then of course also the waves that are well out into the Atlantic Ocean's recovery zones, it's looking a little bumpy out there. I think some of the last data we were looking at from the buoys showed about a 9-foot swell every 8 seconds. And to put that mildly, that is uncomfortable. So I think 9 feet is certainly well beyond what they are going to be able to handle recovering a Falcon 9 booster with. And with this one being only 8 flights old, or 7 flights old technically now, hopefully 8 flights here in just under an hour, a bit risky, certainly risky. But you never know. We'll have to wait and see. This is of course SpaceX after all, and if they do opt to not go at the current 2:46 a.m. T0, I think they do have one more attempt before the end of the window, or I should say one more T0 in the window before it closes at 4:10 a.m. Eastern time here. So, yeah, it's a big question mark right now, Sawyer.
Yeah, as you can see by the shake there on the camera, even that is just from the natural wind out there. There is a steady state wind watch out there, but as we've seen, they have launched in those conditions before. In fact, most recently, I believe it was the NG-23 mission, from memory numbers, right? That just launched, actually had the steady state wind warning in effect when it lifted
Yes.
off. So that's, a watch item, of course. And as pointed out, the official forecast percentage, while they do have the upper level wind shear listed as low concern, that percentage that they, the percentage that they give does not officially take into account upper level winds. There are the other factors, the booster recovery weather, solar weather, etc. But when they're doing the actual favorable percentage, that is not factored in. So when they say 65% looking good, that doesn't count the horrendous looking wind shear that we've seen on models throughout the evening.
Yeah, and also on that forecast from the 45th, there is no real percentage or other, I guess, figure to fully take into account just where that is, or there's no way to actually quantify the actual risk level on that side of the forecast. It's either low, medium, or high. And currently, the upper level wind shear forecast from the 45th is low, which I find a bit humorous because we were looking at some upper level wind shear charts before we went live, and if there was a chart that would allow you to explain wind shear without actually explaining wind shear with words, that is the chart that you show. The wind is basically, guys, the atmosphere is just very, very angry tonight in terms of winds. So, yeah, we will see if SpaceX can pull it off, and I'm sure there are weather balloons being launched every X number of minutes now, just to make sure that they, or to, I guess, hopefully give them an idea when they might hop into a good window. But we're not sure. We'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and find out. But we'll hopefully have a better idea of that in around 15-ish minutes, whether or not they verify they are go for prop load or not. So cross your fingers.
Oh, everything is crossed that can be crossed right now for this to go tonight. It has been it has been way too long since we have seen a Falcon 9 launch from the Cape. I believe we were figuring that it was September 24th was the last time we've seen a rocket take off from
25th.
25th from
Yep.
Cape Canaveral Space Force Station or Kennedy Space Center.
And that was almost 2 weeks ago. That was 12 days ago. And in terms of, I mean, we've had stand downs like this, or gaps, I should say, before. Yeah, especially last year when Falcon 9 had a couple of misfortunes, I guess we could say. But this is, I think, the first gap that we've had that's this large, that is not directly related to any sort of vehicle stand down in maybe 3 to 4 years. I don't have any official number on that. I'm just going off the top of my head, but that was a very, very unexpected period of time to not have any activity. So yeah, but we honestly, it is very good to be back and good to get back into the rhythm of things, because of course we have Starship Flight 11 coming up just around the corner in under a week now. So hoping all goes well tonight.
Exactly. Yeah, you can see we had a double header and then nothing. So
Yeah.
it's good to have it all back here at the Cape. And a reminder, it's good to be back with you and answering your questions, which you can tag us at NSF or at NASA Spaceflight, and we will continue to answer them as we go throughout, including some questions we're already getting here. We've got one here from 9/8 Central asking, is the TTEB an external ignition source, or does it flow through the engine first? So I know we don't have Alex on, but from my understanding, the TTEB, the triethyl aluminum triethyl boron that they use to ignite the Merlin engines, they basically kind of put a little bit into the engine combustion chamber, and that's where it ignites once it contacts the locks and everything like that. So from my understanding, it does happen in the combustion chamber, but it's not like it's running through the engine like they run the locks or the methane through methane, not wrong rocket, or the kerosene through it, the RP1.
Yeah, Merlin is actually a pretty simple engine to start by comparison to a lot of other engines, because it is an open cycle engine that runs on Kerolox or kerosene and liquid oxygen. It's far more simple to start the Merlin than, by contrast, either Raptor or the RS-25 used on Shuttle and SLS. And that is by design. Merlin is meant to be a very cheap and reliable and very reusable engine, and of course it has proven to be that. But also, they have TTEB on board because they also have to relight the engines on Falcon 9 at various stages for either boost back and or entry and then landing burn as well. And they have just enough TTEB on board for those engines that are used for that specifically. Otherwise, the TTEB used to start all of the other engines in the ring are stored on the outside of the rocket elsewhere at the pad. And of course, once the rocket is up and running and those engines that are shut down that don't have to be used again, obviously there's no TTEB needed for those. So a lot of it is stored externally, but there is some on board, obviously, to relight them at some points in flight.
And say for the Merlin vacuum engine, it also has its own TTEB.
Correct.
But for those wondering, sometimes after a launch, you'll see what looks like smoke or fire or something coming nearby from the pad. We do occasionally see them burn off any excess TTEB at the pads occasionally. So if you see smoke or fire or anything like that, that's literally the TTEB that they had stored that they wanted to get rid of the excess. Let's see here. Here's one from the Angry Engineer asking, Max, once they completely transition to Starship fully on the Space Coast, what will happen to the Falcon 9 boosters here? Do they transfer to Vandy, to a new pad?
Ooh. Well, hopefully by the time that SpaceX is at any point really to even think about retiring Falcon, hopefully they will have more Starship facilities up here at the Cape and also at Vandenberg as well. Hopefully, cross your fingers. But I don't know. I guess it depends on how they want to phase it out. I think it'll be a rather drawn out process because you can't just hard transition from Starship over to Falcon, because they have very different performance capabilities, and depending on what you're flying, that would be a rather difficult transition to, I guess, happen, especially with Starlink, because Starship can only fly the Starlink V3 satellites, and we are currently on the V2s and just the V2 minis at the moment, because the V2s were also full sized and cannot be and can only be flown on Starship. But I would like to think that it would be a rather quick transition, depending on what they have lined up in terms of payload. but I can't imagine it would take more than a year tops, because obviously we still have yet to see Starship come online operationally, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years for at least commercial payloads, and maybe 5 to 8 realistically, probably for any sort of crew, crew approval, or crew rating approval, I should say. So it's tough to say right now because we are still at least 8 to 10 years out from Falcon from Falcon 9 at least being anywhere near being at a point to be retired. So not quite sure, but we'll have to wait and see.
Right. And again, eventually the goal is once Starship is fully up and running, then they'll run out whatever contracts they have left basically with Falcon 9 and retire the vehicle. So at
Exactly.
that point, it would go more to museums. And my understanding is they also eventually want to start building Starship pads out at Vandenberg, given they have
Yep.
the pads for it. So I think at that point, Falcon 9, whatever's left, become museum pieces rather than switching coasts or anything like that, unfortunately. But as you pointed out, Max, still a ways away from that, as, we still have Starship Flight 11 from Pad 1 still to come before we even
Yep.
get to the orbital flights.
Exactly.
Which I know there's already a bunch of questions about that. Mr. Fluffy coming in with the $5 super chat saying, "So, Sawyer and Max going to Starbase to show Jack how to cook bacon? I mean, Flight 11?"
Well, I know how to cook bacon. Actually, Jack is the one who taught me the oven method, but otherwise I use the pan seared in case anybody was wondering, which they probably weren't. But yes, I will be heading that way at about midweek, probably Wednesday or Thursday. And I will be there till it goes. I know we have other crew coming back into town to hold down the fort here at the Cape, but I will be making my way down to Starbase. I know Sawyer, you still have yet to go there, and I'm wondering when you might pull that trigger and go.
Probably once they get the new pad out and once they go back to catching them again. I really want to see the catch. So, it won't be for Flight 11. Unfortunately, I will not be able to make it out there physically for this one, but of course, I'll still be with everyone on countdown to launches and the stakeout streams and the launch and all of that. So, I'll still be with you, just not physically there for this one.
I can't wait. Honestly, Sawyer, I cannot wait for you to see it. Like it borderline dwarfs everything else you have seen here at the Cape. It's magnificent.
Oh, I can't wait. I really can't. It's going to be great when that does happen. Also, they said no hurricanes on the best coast. Just saying. False.
Yeah, false.
Aren't there hurricanes? They have different hurricane names out on the west coast and the Pacific. I think there was just one named Octave was the most recent Pacific hurricane. So they're already into the O's over there.
Yeah, but also, I think 1 or 2 have made landfall in Southern California in the last couple of years. Like I can't recall which storm that actually was. But it is granted, it is a lot rarer to see a hurricane or a strong hurricane at all make landfall on the West Coast, whether it be California, Oregon, Washington, anywhere over there. Because obviously here in Florida, we are in the prime tropical region, and hurricanes are just a lot more prevalent here. And there have been a number of systems built up from Africa in the last maybe month and a half or so. But we have been lucky enough to where they have all curved north and avoided direct landfall here. But regardless, because they're still out there, we still feel the effects from it, either by winds, waves, any of that. So it's been a very wild month for weather here, at least on the Space Coast. But granted, I think the weather for this year up to that point was borderline too good for what it was supposed to be or what it normally is. So I guess now we're actually paying for it. We are now actually in the heart of hurricane season as well. So I guess our luck might be running out, but hopefully not.
I also have 4 words for Vandenberg with the hurricanes and all that stuff. Drone ships, fog.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
even if the hurricane isn't directly hitting, Southern California or the Vandenberg Space Force Base area, you still have the recovery ships which are downrange given the polar trajectories, typically further south, like in the areas around Mexico where they would actually potentially deal with these storms. So not always best coast out there with hurricanes too, just saying.
Not to mention Southern Polar Launch Corridor, cough.
Yes, which I think according to next space flight, we may still have one or two more of those coming up. I think there's still one more this year, so we will see. Let me also thank Adam James for becoming a Pad Rat member, Susan becoming a Pad Rat member as well, and Anita, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member too, and RC Horseman coming in gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much, RC Horseman. We really appreciate that. And of course, if you got one of those gifted memberships, make sure to give RC Horseman a big thank you. And with those 10 gifted memberships, we are also hopefully less than 10 minutes away from the start of fueling. In fact, hopefully much closer than that. Max, where are we at in the timeline?
Yes, so we are closing in on the first milestone of what will hopefully be the final countdown toward launch this evening, or this morning, I should say. So at the T-minus 38-minute mark, that is when the SpaceX launch director here over at Hangar X will either verify if the vehicle and ground systems are go for propellant loading, if the weather is playing ball and cooperating. Assuming that is the case, at T-minus 35 minutes, both Stage 1 RP1 load and liquid oxygen load will commence along with Stage 2 RP1 load, or Stage 2 RP1 load, and that will continue up until about T-minus 20 minutes, where we will see a rather big vent coming from the transporter erector, and that is when SpaceX has wrapped up Stage 2 RP1 load and is then thermally conditioning the prop lines in the transporter erector. Geez Louise, I can't talk. For Stage 2 liquid oxygen load, and that should wrap up at about T-minus 16 and a half minutes. But of course, to get through any of that, the launch director has to give a go. And while we won't have any audible confirmation of that, we will hopefully be seeing frost, if all goes well, at around the T-minus 31 or 32 minute mark on the camera. So keep your eyes peeled, because we are about at that mark now. And if there is going to be any further push into the window, this is about when we would hear it. So cross your fingers, cross your toes, cross everything you got that Falcon 9 is behaving itself, and so is the weather. But you never know. It is a rather big question mark tonight.
It really is, and we will keep an eye on that, and we'll see if they do go or if they end up pushing further into the window. But yeah, that notification should be coming much sooner than later, so everyone keep your eyes peeled and be on frost watch. Let's see here. We got a bunch of great questions coming in tonight. Here's one from Ethan asking, does the recovery ship have a quicker turnaround than the launch pads? I don't think so, personally, because I mean, we've seen launches 2.5 days apart out of Slick 40, and we've seen them land on either a shortfall of Gravitas and then just read the instructions. Because with the drone ships, you have to take into account that they have to take a day or so to get out there. The actual launch has to happen, the landing, and then another day or so to get back. Then they have to offload it, which takes a couple hours, and then send it back out. Am I right on that kind of thinking, Max?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it takes the drone ships, I guess, assuming all is nominal. I think it takes the drone ships a minimum of like 4 to 5, maybe 6 days on the slow one from I should say, starting to leave port and then coming back in with a booster. So it would take a while, and of course, as you've said, we've seen launches, back-to-back launches from Slick 40, which is the pad they're flying from tonight, in under 3 days before. So definitely the launch pad for sure. But if they want to fly even more often, they will either have to go with a more commonly used RTLS flight path for a lot of the boosters and payloads, or a return to launch site, which is where they utilize LZ2 now, and hopefully the pads over at Slick 40 and 39A that they are going to be building, or they get a third drone ship, which we think they might not. We still don't have any real clear visual or confirmation about it, but the drone ships definitely remain a bottleneck in certainly increasing the launch cadence, albeit when that is all under a nominal condition, when the weather is behaving itself, which of course for the past couple of weeks it has not been.
Yeah, and you can see there on the right, you can see, it looks like that's just read the instructions there in port, and Bob, I believe, also in port, if I'm seeing that right. So you see the fairing
Yep.
recovery ship on the right with the crane, and then the big giant flat autonomous spaceport drone ship is just read the instructions on the left. And of course, you could see those and all of the activities offloading the boosters on our Space Coast Live 24/7 cameras. We have cameras down at Rusty's at the port there. You can see all of that turnaround action happening. We've been talking a lot about the wind tonight. Obviously, we can see the shake there. But here's an interesting question from a Carson Phillips, I believe. I don't know who that could be, though. Asking for Max, how's the wind and will it affect the sound from the rocket?
Well, the wind is winding and it's very windy. Take that to the bank. But yeah, it actually the wind speed and direction plays a rather a serious effect on how the sound either travels or reaches us here at the KSC press site. And we are stationed at about 4.5 miles away from Slick 40 that you were seeing on your screen. So at the moment, the winds are blowing more or less directly east. So for the most part, that is blowing almost directly from the launch pad to us. So if anything, the sound should reach us a bit faster tonight than it otherwise normally would. And so, assuming the wind buffering in the microphone isn't too bad, we should get great audio tonight. But that's, of course, obviously, if it flies and if the microphone isn't peaking from the gusts, because it is very, very gusty tonight, as we have said a million times already tonight. But it feels pretty humid. But also, the temperature, I have to say, is a rather pleasant, I think, 78 or 79 degrees Fahrenheit right now. And I think in Celsius, that's like 27, 28 degrees Celsius. I'm just doing that off the top of my head. So temperature-wise, it's pleasant, but the winds are a bit excessive. But I think we are mostly, in business for a rather strong audio experience tonight, assuming the microphones aren't blown out by the winds. But yes, wind direction, humidity, and speed, and also temperature have all together have play huge factors in how the sound reaches those that are at a farther distance from the launch pad.
Also, wind is winding. I like that one very much.
Wind is winding.
Yes. And whoever that person is that asks the questions, don't ever let them touch any buttons on this stream. Don't let them switch cameras. Don't let them have a soundboard ever. Don't trust that person, Carson Phillips, whoever they may be. Watch, I'm about to be muted now and you won't be able to hear anything I'm saying. Thank you for producing, Carson. Here's a really unique question. John Cook asking, we talked about the 4 towers, the blinking lights, and all of that, and why we only see 3 of them because of the angle of the lights and where they're located. Why aren't they blinking at the top of the tower? Now, from my understanding, as we continue Frostwatch here, it looks like we might be starting to see some.
I think so. Yeah.
We're within that minute range or so of when we normally see it. That looks like frost to me. Chat, help me out here, but I am pretty
I'm seeing
sure
some
frost.
puffs of clouds there, so that is definitely frost. So wow, they are actually proceeding to try for the 2:46 a.m. T0 currently. Wow, I'm genuinely surprised. I'm not going to lie.
Given the winds, yeah, but with Falcon 9, as we know, once they start fueling, they are committed to that T0. So 31 minutes and 32 seconds from now, we will either see a launch or not see a launch at all today. So keeping that in mind, or at least in this attempt, I should say, because if it does go 24 hours, technically, it still would be today, but just later to anyway.
It's just the reality of orbital mechanics, folks.
Exactly. But in regards to the light question, why are they not directly at the top of the tower? I have a theory. I don't know if this is 100% correct, but first off, you can see they're blinking at the top of the part that is basically hard to tell from an airplane. Because obviously these are lights, to notify of airplanes and things, that there's tall towers in the area. You see those white blinking lights there. My thought, and Max, again, I could be totally wrong on this, this is just a theory, is the fact that lightning tends to strike the highest thing. And the highest thing they want to be the catenary wires, the wires on top of those white poles that then move the lightning away. Rather than striking the lights itself, it strikes the lightning wires. Again, just a theory.
Honestly, I was going to suggest something very similar, because I also do not know this officially, like confirmed. But yeah, essentially the highest the highest objects you want on these towers are the catenary wires, which are used to transfer the electrical charge down to the ground and away from the rocket and the ground systems. And of course, if you have a blinking light up there and lightning strikes it, you no longer have a functioning light bulb. So I think that's about spot on, Sawyer. Although again, I don't know officially. I'll have to talk to whoever designed these towers. But I think that is the generally accepted, I guess, normal definition. Or I guess yeah, I think that's it.
Sounds good to me, at least. And
Yep.
again, if people do know, obviously reach out to us on the socials or whatever. If you worked on it or have any more insight, reach out to us on the social channels. I'm actually intrigued as well. And I'm sure we'll be asking around now when we're out at Cape Side. As we now pass under the T-minus 30-minute mark until the launch of today's Starlink 10-59 mission from Slick 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Getting ready to see another northeasterly launch here, going along the coast of the United States, carrying these 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites aboard B1090-8. In terms of the launch tonight, of course, we've been watching the winds, we've been watching the weather there, but they have begun fueling and are proceeding. But John Cook with a question for you, Max. Are there any specific camera shots that you are trying for the launch tonight?
None more than I normally do for Starlinks. So I have two cameras to my left that are directly I should say, they are directly contributing to our live stream, and then behind me I just have a singular still camera to get the immediate movement after liftoff. Good lord, I cannot talk tonight. So typically with how mainstream and how, I guess, quote unquote normalized Starlink missions have become, it becomes a bit more difficult to go for anything unique compared to what you've got in the past, because we're often in the exact same spot and have the exact same angle of the exact same launch pad for the exact same rocket. So variety becomes a lot more of a challenge when you see something happen so often from a certain perspective. But besides dealing with the super high winds tonight, I wouldn't say that I'm trying anything super new. But this being the first launch in 2 weeks, of course, I have cameras pointed at it, and I want to get shots just for documentation. So nothing new, but always out here with cameras in hand whenever I can, basically.
Exactly. And yeah, we try and take as many photos as we can of all of these launches, including the Starlinks, because you never know what you might capture. There's always some cool random shots that might happen. You might get, a vapor cone. You might get something that we don't like to see, but you never know. So we always have our cameras pointing at all of those. And someone asked earlier what launched where the photo came from in the thumbnail for this. And I don't know off the top of my head which particular mission, but all of the photos that we use for the thumbnails are of these launches that our team takes out in the field. And in fact, Max, when we go out, there are certain times that we will frame photos so that we can have different options for YouTube thumbnails, even for a little behind the scenes action there.
Yeah, either thumbs for YouTube or also for articles as well, because we also write plenty of those over on our website. So normally I like to shoot rockets in portrait or vertical. But also obviously horizontal is a lot better for articles or anything on a landscape screen. So certainly a time and place for both. But of course, variety, as I was saying earlier, does become a bit of a challenge when you see Falcon 9 launch from this very, very perspective well over 200 times now.
Yeah, it gets tough from a photography standpoint, but it never gets old from
Correct.
a viewing standpoint.
Yeah, 100%. It's still an absolute privilege to be out here, and we enjoy every single second of it, and it's always still so much fun. And we try and change things up by either putting us in the foreground with some element of excitement or awe or just admiration towards the launch itself, but also with it going northeast from Slick 40, even taking a streak shot if you don't have a wide enough lens can also be a challenge. So But regardless, it is always still so much fun to be here and also a real privilege. And honestly, I have to say, even though that about almost 2-week break was refreshing, it is always great to come back here and get back into business.
Yeah, it felt wrong not having launches. It's like, wait, where's the launch tonight? There isn't one. When's the next one? And it
Yeah,
keeps
it
pushing.
was like
Wait, what?
it was like Will Ferrell. Like I'm not sure. Like I'm not sure like what to do with my hands. Like it was getting kind of boring. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh man, but yeah, nope. It's good to have that back, and it's always good to try and find fun angles, fun shots for the different ones. And yeah, usually when there's people out there, we'll go for different angles. We'll be at different spots at the press site. But yeah, also Max, I know it's so hard to be excited for these photos and videos and things, right? I mean, you have to fake it every time. Wink, wink.
Yeah, totally faking it. It's 100% AI generated.
Yes, yes, all of those reactions are from Grok, not us actually having fun out there in the field doing this.
Grok and Chat GPT and everything else.
And Sora 2 or whatever that new thing is now.
Yes, which is scarily good, I have to say.
It is scarily good, but it's also getting towards that scary time of year as we are now nearing Halloween, but it is also, I believe, the harvest moon tonight. We have a full moon, at least. And Keith Tag is wondering, Max, any chance of a moon jellyfish with said full moon?
Absolutely. So tonight are prime conditions because, of course, we have a full moon above our heads and a mostly clear sky. Albeit there are some clouds scattered, but not enough to fully obscure our view well into flight tonight. So yes, the chances of a quote moon jelly are very high tonight, and the moonlight anyway accentuates the exhaust from the MVAC on Falcon 9's upper stage very well anyway. So. Especially if you have a view of tonight's launch with your Mark 1 eyeballs, you should have an absolutely great view. Whether you're here on the Space Coast or up the coast in the Carolinas, you should have a great view easily.
Yeah, I mean, you can see there all of our 24/7 live cameras able to capture the moon earlier tonight from Space Coast to Starbase to McGregor, all three of them managing to capture that full moon there. And again, if you do happen to go out and capture that moon jellyfish, oh, I love those. Send it to us on social media. We're on X, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, all of those. You can see some of them up there, threads. So if you are out there and you do happen to catch it, please tag us. I always check after launches to see who tags us in any of their photos because I always think it's so cool that here we are covering it, in Florida, and yet someone all the way up the coast is like, oh yeah, same launch. We're all watching same launch,
Yep.
same time going up the coast. It's just so cool. Let's see here. Let me thank Revhead here for earlier gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much for that. Again, we can only do what we do because of viewer support. And of course, now's a great time to become a member with Starship Flight 11 coming up, getting all of those member multi-views and all of the behind-the-scenes things during launch. As it gets closer, it's a great time to join at any level to get access to that. Here's one from Mr. Fluffy. I know there's a lot of people wanting Falcon Heavy, but here at Slick 40, seems like only one landing pad is being built there. Any idea what the plan would be for a Falcon Heavy launch with booster recovery?
If they end up only building one over at LC39A, I think the idea is going to be to obviously split the boosters and have one land over at Slick 40 and one land over at 39. But it would be a lot more visually pleasing to see 2 LZs over at Pad A somewhere and see them both come back at a very similar angle in a very similar spot. So I think that would be the plan going forward, but to be honest with you, there is not going to be a Falcon Heavy flying anytime soon. So I think they have plenty of time to work that out, unfortunately.
Also, if I recall, one of the issues they had with the environmental assessment was that they can't launch from one pad and land at another. So they will have to be, the plan is, I believe, to build up to 2 landing zones at LC39A. Because for those people who don't realize, 39A is a huge launch pad. It's
Yes.
a lot bigger than it looks. I mean, it has an entire Starship tower. It has the fixed service structure, And there's still a whole part to the north that isn't used that much right now that will be for Starship architecture. So I'm sure we'll see that over at 39A. But we will see right now here at Slick 40, as we hit the T-minus 20-minute, 20-second mark, is, of course, the best vent, as we like to call it here, with the chill down of the lines here. So we are now at the milestone where they are done with RP1 load on the second stage. That is rocket propellant 1, the refined form of kerosene. And now they are chilling down the lines in anticipation of the loading of the supercooled liquid oxygen, or LOX. This goes on for about 4 minutes and conditions the lines so that they'll be ready for all the cold stuff that's about to go through it, because the RP1 is a lot warmer than the LOX. I mean, it still wouldn't go out there sticking your finger in it, but it's warmer. So getting the lines ready. And yeah, once that vent stops, or cool down, or smokiness, ventiness, whatever you want to call it, once that calms down at about T-minus 16 minutes, then we will know that liquid oxygen load is underway on stage 2. Meanwhile, stage 1 continuing to load up with the liquid oxygen and RP1 simultaneously. And S. Murphy asking along those lines, Max, why does it frost?
Essentially, that is the super cold, or that is because the RP1 and LOX are so cold, they also bring down the actual temperature of the tank structures of Falcon 9 down to a similar temperature. And because that is meeting the super humid, super warm by comparison air, it will immediately condense and then freeze on the actual tank surface, and that is, of course, why you see ice and condensation on the outside. It's a very similar concept to having a very cold, like, can of soda outside during the summer, and it's sweating, or having water on the sides of the can. It's a very similar concept, albeit with a lot, I guess, a lot wider of a gap in temperatures than you are perhaps used to with those examples. But that is why ice, that is why frost, and that is why vapor. And there are some days, especially here in the winter, where it's really not that warm and really not that humid, and the frost isn't as prevalent. But even I've seen Angara and Soyuz, even when it's like when the temperatures are below freezing, below, like, I think 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius is still incredibly warm by contrast compared to, I think, the negative 200-ish degree area of both LOX and Supershell RP1 that we see on Falcon. So yeah, that is why frost, that is why condensation, and unless the air around us is around negative 150 to 200 or lower degrees Celsius and Fahrenheit, we are always going to see it.
And we always like to say that it really gives you a good idea of the conditions at the Cape in terms of humidity and things like that, and the winds. If it's very humid, you'll see a lot more, especially during
Yep.
this 20-minute event. And it'll either kind of hang around it like a cloak, or it will blow wind like a cape, which, again, I still think we need a cape. But that kind of gives you an indication of where the wind is, too.
And as you can see, it is blowing well to the east and south of the rocket at the moment. The pad is a lot closer to the ocean than we are, so it is directly subject to, of course, the wind forces coming off of it than we are, because we're about 5 miles inland by comparison. But yeah, a very good visual indicator, and that should be wrapping up here in about 15 or so seconds.
Exactly. Maybe a little bit longer, but yeah. But yeah, in regards to that, I mean, we are along water where we are there, but that is the Banana River. And there we go. You can see that dying down, getting ready for the LOX load on stage 2. I stand corrected, Max. You had the time pretty darn close.
Haha!
Almost like you've done this a couple, 100 times or so at this point.
Just a few. I'm still an amateur.
But yeah, so that is the case with the weather. And of course, the weather, for those just joining, has been a little bit of a concern that we've been watching here, although the official forecast is 65% favorable for all of the conditions. You can see there the primary concerns being the liftoff winds and the cumulus cloud rule. The area has been in just a steady wind advisory. Basically, the winds have been constantly above 15 to 30 knots in certain areas. But the main thing, despite what it says on the screen of upper level wind shear being low, the models that we've been watching tonight have been showing some pretty strong upper level winds And that has been quite a concern. They've already pushed a couple hours into the window, and while they do technically have about an hour and a half left, they obviously can't take that because once they begin fueling, they are committed to said T0. Have the winds kind of improved at all over there, Max?
I want to say yeah, but that honestly might just be placebo because there's still the same amount of camera shake and the trees are still blowing around us pretty strongly. So I don't think there has been much change. And as you were mentioning the models for the upper level winds, on top of speed, the actual wind shear and direction change is also severe. I think it's safe to say because I think at some points the wind pulls a full 180 within a couple thousand feet, 1,000 feet of each other. So that's very strong. And because Falcon 9 is one of the more vulnerable rockets when it comes to wind shear, that is I think their main concern for tonight. And it is they are of course flying it to be recovered and not expending it, but they are nonetheless sending Falcon 9 through these winds twice, albeit the winds up top might be a bit different or will be different than they are here downrange. But yeah, either way, Falcon 9 is probably going to be having a turbulent and bumpy ride up tonight. But of course, this is a Starlink mission. SpaceX's own payload, SpaceX's own rocket. If they would like to, this is when they like to push the envelope a little bit more with Falcon to get more data to really expand, I guess, the envelope of what Falcon 9 can perform well in. So there could be something exciting happening later, or it will look like business as usual. Obviously, we are hoping for the latter, but you never know. But the winds are very, very strong tonight.
Yeah, for those who don't know, the concern with rockets and wind shear, basically, the concern is as it goes up, the wind is going in one direction pretty strong. And, up to a certain point, the engines gimbal, which means they move, they can compensate to help steer in the right direction. As it gets to the point where the wind shear is, that means that all of a sudden the wind that may be going, 20 or 30 to 50 knots one direction suddenly then switches to the same speed or faster in the other direction. So Falcon 9 is already aiming to go right to compensate for a left wind, and then all of a sudden it gets hit with a strong left wind and it has to work its way back. Over the years, of course, they've fine-tuned the rocket itself, the steering, the software, and have learned where they can push the limits on Falcon 9. So we will see if it all remains within limits in 12 and a half minutes from now. And if so, it should be a pretty good view for people up the northeastern seaboard. In case you're wondering where this one is going tonight in terms of trajectory, this is the usual trajectory-wise. Of course, it's always not your ordinary Starlink, but this is the ordinary for this time of year trajectory going to the northeastern part, kind of hugging along the coast. There you can see it on your screen right there. And in that other big giant blob there near the Carolinas, located in there will be the recovery assets, including a Shortfall of Gravitas, the drone ship, which is downrange to hopefully catch the booster, as well as Doug, which is downrange to scoop up the two fairing halves, which will then hopefully be picked up out of the water, brought back to the port, and reused. And the booster tonight, well, right now, it looks very white and clean. A lot of that is just kind of the frost covering all of the soot on it. But Max, this is still a pretty young booster, right?
It is. This is booster B1090, and tonight's mission would be it's only its 8th flight. And by comparison to a lot of the other Falcon 9 first stage fleet, both here in Florida and in Vandenberg, it's still kind of a youngster. It's not even quite middle-aged yet. So, yeah, a rather young booster and should be rather strong because of it. So, obviously, at this point, we have seen a Falcon 9 first stage fly 30 times, and that is booster B1067, which is the current fleet leader here in Florida, and I guess also for Vandy as well. But a lot of the fleet is above the actual 20 flight milestone now, so it's incredible to see. But they are still on the road to actually getting a Falcon 9 booster certified for 40 flights, and that is the next objective and milestone for the Falcon 9 first stage boosters. So, yeah, it is still a young booster, but honestly, we still love to see it. But even though it is only 7 flights in so far, there is still a good layer of soot built up on the tank structures of the first stage, and that is that dark discoloration that you have seen. which now, of course, is mostly covered by white frost, which kind of gives the illusion that it's a very clean and brand new booster, which of course we know it's not. But that is the magic of what ice and super chilled propellants can do.
Exactly. I mean, for those wondering the exact missions from this one, we had a couple of O3B mPOWERs, both D and E, which is O3B mPOWER 7 and 8, as well as 9 and 10. We also had more recently the CRS 33 mission as its most recent flight, which was an ISS resupply mission. There was Starlink 1018, 6-67. It also had the Bandwagon 3 mission. And had the honor of the final landing, I believe. Was it Crew 10 that had the final landing at LZ1, or was that Crew 11?
I believe that was Crew 11. Yeah. Crew
So
11.
the next to last, the last one that we heard at least from the press site of LZ1 with Crew 10, which that was such a gorgeous launch. That was right around sunset. In fact,
Yes,
hey,
it
what do you
was.
know? There's a picture from it that's available as a metal print or as a poster at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. And this is the exact booster that you see on the right side of your screen, just on its second flight instead of, in this case, its 8th flight. That was the Crew 10 launch in front of the American flag, taken by yours truly. A little self-promotion in there, because it is worth noting that if you do get a print, a portion of it does go support whoever took said photo. And again, it's metal prints. It's also available in posters. And of course, we have some other amazing shots out there. I mean, the solar transit that Max got recently was amazing. We have all of the Starship stuff, of course, with the hype coming up for Flight 11. And if you want to even support, you can see on the left side of your screen, you can sort by Max's photos and my photos or whoever. If you like a particular photographer, a particular vehicle, and it's a great time, especially with the hype for Starship, to check out all the Starship ones. And now with activity finally picking up again at the Cape, to check those out too. So that's shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Oh, look at that. There's even a fancy banner for that. 8.5 minutes to go now. We have, again, we talked about how many Starlink missions there's been. We are, are we at the 100 mark yet from the Cape? I don't think we are yet.
Let me check live facts really quickly. I don't think we're quite there yet, although we are getting kind of close.
I think we're in the 80s, if I recall correctly, at this point, in terms of how many launches from Florida so far this year. I mean, I hate to say it, but they all kind of blur together when you see so many of them for Florida.
I know. Either way, it has been a lot, and I think at this point it's worth mentioning that before this big 2-week gap in flights, almost 2-week gap, they were on pace for about 135 to 136 flights for 2025. I think with that gap, I think they missed out on anywhere from 4 to 6 launches, maybe from both coasts. Alex in the back channel, in the back channel, this is the 84th launch from Florida this year. Yeah, and that's counting everybody. If it was SpaceX, this is only 78. Thank you so much, Alex. Either way, it is a lot of missions, and I think with this delay, where I was going with that, I think by now I think they're more on pace to probably get the high 120s, maybe cross the 130 milestone, unless they really ramp up flight cadence in the last quarter of this year, which we are now currently in quarter 4. So either way, still, only 130 flights. That's such a tragedy. I know. But that is a lot, especially compared to what they were doing 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, what a shame. Also, again, crazy to think that this year, that's 78. This will be the 79th Falcon 9 launch from Florida this year, because we haven't had any Falcon Heavies. We had 3 Atlases, 2 Vulcans, and a partridge in a pear tree, aka Blue Origin New Glenn, was this year. So,
I think we've only had 1 Vulcan this year. So I think Cert 2 was last year. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, and then so it was Vulcan Cert 2, and actually almost just over 1 year ago, in October of last year, and then of course we had USSF 106, the first national security mission, launching aboard Vulcan just about a couple of months ago now.
Yeah, it was the 4 Atlases, and then either way, can't forget that Blue Origin New Glenn was this year. It's hard to believe.
Yes, it was.
It's also hard to believe that we're under 6 minutes to go now from this particular launch. Max, I know I need to let you go get all of your cameras set up and ready at this point. So I believe we will catch up with you after the launch.
Indeedy. I will come back to comms as soon as I possibly can, but I will also be tracking for as long as I have visuals. So thank you very much, Sawyer, and everyone else watching, and I will see y'all on the other side.
Looking forward to it. Now, at this point, with 5.5 minutes down, the engine chill happened about a minute and a half ago, all going according to plan. If so, that is where they start running the propellant through the engines, get everything ready for the super cold propellant running through it, and the drastic temperature difference that it will experience at liftoff there. Also clearing out any air from those lines, filling them all with propellant, getting those engines ready to fire up, those 9 Merlin 1D engines, hopefully a little under 5 minutes from now. Again, this is the Starlink 10-59 mission with 28 satellites on board. So far, this booster, prior to tonight, has launched 69 of the Starlink, or 69 satellites, in general, into space. So looking to add 28 more to that. We should now be coming up on the retraction of the strong back. So you see those little that yellow structure up there, and there's clamps kind of around the payload fairing there. That will open up, and then the strong back will lean back about 1.8 degrees. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's just enough to get out of the way. So it will lean back. There you go. You can actually see it slightly starting to move, it looks like. You can see all of the cables and wires and things that are attached to it will start to extend just a little bit, just enough to move it out of the way. And then, of course, once it lifts off, it will throw all the way back. You can also see those fairing halves are pretty well flight proven. I don't know if we have the exact number that each of those has flown just yet, but boy, are they quite sooty. And so while we have a booster flying for the 8th time, those definitely look like they have flown more than 8 times. And again, there's 2 different kinds of halves. There is the active half and the passive half. So one that actively has the pushing mechanism in it to separate the 2 away, and one that just kind of hangs out there and gets pushed away. So the Type A and the Type B personality fairing halves on that. Coming up now on about 3 minutes to go. We should be getting into the parts where we will hear the call-outs for wrapping up of propellant loads. We will have the liquid oxygen and the RP1 loads wrapping up here in just a little bit. And again, about 2.5 minutes to go. As we get deeper into the count and they start finishing up those prop loads, we will hopefully get to the point where we have Falcon 9 entering startup. And that's at about T-minus 1 minute. That is when all of the onboard computers take control of the count. That is also when the tanks will pressurize, 2 flight levels. But again, waiting for them to announce basically that Falcon 9 is fully fueled. And I'm getting word in the back channel that those fairing halves, from what we can see, one of them was serial number 212-15, and the other one is serial number 183, which we don't have an exact number of how many flights for that. But there you go. You can hear liquid oxygen load complete on stage 2. So with that, we basically have a fully fueled rocket here. So the next thing you'll hear will be the gas closeout lines. So basically a final purge of any gases that remain in the lines on that TE, the transporter erector, the strong back there. Anything that could possibly be issues as the rocket flies by it and it starts to, interact with whatever might be there. And there we go. That is the gas closeout call. And now you can see it there. Extra frosty, extra venty, very similar to what we saw at the 20-minute, 20-second vent with the frost coming out of the vehicle. We are now coming up on about 1 minute to go, at which point Falcon 9, as mentioned, will enter startup and the onboard computers will have control for the remainder of the countdown.
Falcon 9 doesn't start up.
There we go. There's the call out. Again, our cameras are a couple seconds ahead, so you'll hear it on a slight delay from the SpaceX feed because of their latency. But next, we will hopefully hear go for launch if they're going to proceed.
Launch director, go for launch.
And there we go. That is the go for launch. They are going to proceed with tonight's launch about 30 seconds from now. So the next major events that we will see will be the Rainbirds activating at the base of the rocket. That will kind of act as a bit of a sound suppression system as we get ready for the ignition of those 9 Merlin 1D engines. That'll be a green flash of T-Tab, which will ignite the engines, and then hopefully we will see liftoff about 10 seconds from now. Keep an eye on the base of the rocket there by the trees. Looking for ignition. And liftoff of Starlink 10-59, bringing 28 more internet satellites to space. Let's listen in for the sound. Amazing sound tonight. You can see vehicle already passing through max Q, maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. I see some of you in chat notice the VAB squeal, the vibration on the panels of the side of the vehicle assembly building, which we often get from these Slick 40 launches. So all of that noise, the people that say it's fake, that is the sound of the VAB. Hopefully you could hear it that time. At this point now we are coming up on 2 minutes into flight. In just a little bit, we will be coming up on 3 events in rapid succession, starting off with MECO, main engine cutoff, when those 9 Merlin 1D engines will shut down. That will be followed by the separation of the first and second stages, and then the ignition of the single Merlin vacuum engine on stage 2. And as it gets into the thinner parts of the atmosphere here, we see the plume expansion and that really deep blue color, which is usually the indication right before MECO. There it is. That's main engine cutoff. Next up will be the separation of that first and second stage. And there you can see ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine. And you can see a little bit of the glow of stage 1 behind it. Now we could see it on a bit of a delay from the SpaceX feed on board. Absolutely beautiful. Everything looks good on the right side with that Merlin vacuum engine. And on the left, you can see the grid fins starting to unfold on the side of the screen there. Again, it looks a little slower. That is from the SpaceX feed. That is, don't adjust your sets, as they used to say. Next up will be the separation of those payload fairing halves, and there they go. Those will now splash down back into the water. You can see them, in fact, on this ground track from Max. If you look, there were 2 dots there in the plume. You can see those are the fairing halves that will now go splash back down and be recovered downrange by Doug, scooped up and then flown again. And of course, when we talk about the jellyfish, this is kind of what we mean here. This is what we call a lunar jellyfish. Basically, there is the full moon going on tonight, as many of you have seen. As it interacts with the plume and the higher parts of the atmosphere here, you can see it kind of looks like the top of a jellyfish as that plume expands in the thinner parts of the atmosphere. So, as a result, we call it the jellyfish effect. And this is a lunar jelly, pretty much perfect to a T. Gorgeous views tonight by Max on the tracking with this one. Huge shout out to Max Evans tonight. And you can also see from our other trackers that we have, I know we have a couple of people in the back, Dan and Gage, also doing some robot tracking. Shout out to the team working on all of this tonight. And now, next up, we will be coming up shortly on the entry burn. That is when it will start with a single engine, followed shortly thereafter by 3 engines igniting to help fight fire with fire, as we like to say, where it will kind of basically create a sort of thermal blanket that it wraps itself around in using its own plume as it goes into the thicker parts of the atmosphere to help slow itself down and act as a kind of heat shield in a way to not make it super hot for the booster there. And we are now 5 minutes into flight. Also worth noting, we were talking earlier in the broadcast, Max and I, about it feels like it's been a long time since we've had such a long gap. This is the longest turnaround time for this launch pad, Slick 40, since late January when they did their annual overhaul of the launch pad. So this finally, after 11 days, 22 hours, 7 minutes, and 10 seconds, broke the streak of launches from Slick 40, and in fact, from the Cape, as the most recent launch from the Cape was Atlas launched later that same day as that most recent mission 11 days ago. So keep an eye on the left side of your screen now for the entry burn. Again, as pointed out, it will start with a single engine, and then it will be 3 engines in total. You'll be able to tell when it switches as it goes from kind of more a rounded flame into a square flame. Or rectangular, I should say. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Of course, our team on the ground also has the cameras pointed that way to see if we can capture the entry burn. Well, those of you along the coast, keep an eye out. And in fact, there is the entry burn. I believe that is Max with that capture. And then, of course, also from our Cape cams there, that is the 3 engines helping to slow Falcon 9 down and protect it through the parts of the atmosphere there as it worked its way back down towards the drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas. And we can see again on the slight delay from the SpaceX feed, it going from 3 engines. It will then go back down to 1 engine and then shut down. And that looks like a good entry burn. Meanwhile, on the right side of your screen, of course, Stage 2 continuing its push into orbit. Now 150 kilometers in altitude, 16,500 kilometers per hour in speed. And yet on the left, that first stage, you'll be able to see some of that plasma interaction now through the grid fins as it gets towards the thicker parts of the atmosphere here, just 20 kilometers off the deck of the drone ship, 3,500 kilometers per hour, and slowing rapidly. Also keep an eye on the left side. You may be able to see a light kind of peeking through one of those grid fins if we're lucky. And if so, that will be the drone ship, which again today is a shortfall of Gravitas, which is located northeast of the launch site, kind of near the Carolinas, ready for a landing on said drone ship.
I'm back, Sawyer.
Amazing tracking work tonight, Max.
Felt incredibly rusty in combination with the wind, but I appreciate it.
I mean, you got the entry burn there too, and in just a moment, we should be seeing the landing burn from the SpaceX feeds, as we are now under 1,000 kilometers per hour, 4 kilometers up. And let's stand by for that landing burn. There we go. Stage 2 and terminal guidance, first stage. See those grid fins acting now in the thicker part of the atmosphere to help steer it towards the deck. There is the live view from a shortfall of Gravitas on the right.
Landing leg deploy.
Landing legs are out. And touchdown.
Wow.
Stage
Another
2
successful
FTS
landing for 1090-9 now. Great job on that. And stage 2 looking good as well. Of course, the primary objective there, gaining those Starlink satellites into space. Absolutely beautiful. How was it from your perspective tonight, Max?
Beautiful. I actually threw my hands up because I was genuinely surprised that there was a go for launch and it actually went up because the winds are so bad. But yeah, I'm just grateful to see it go.
I think all of us were very grateful to see it go. We're also very grateful for Echo Deal coming in. When the moon hits your plume and it makes the light bloom, that's a jelly. That was an absolutely beautiful jellyfish tonight as well with the moon. And we heard the VAB squeal. And if you want to rehear it, you can check out all the replays that we will have some on our social media channels. So make sure you follow us on all the socials to catch those replays. But Max, it's been a long night/morning for us here. I think it's time to pack it in. Max, thank you so much for rolling out tonight and getting amazing views for us.
It is a pleasure as always, and it is really good to be back after that long 2-week delay. But thank you very much, everyone, for coming to hang out, and we will see y'all hopefully in just a few days for Starship Flight 11.
Yes, and thank you as well to Carson Phillips for pushing the buttons and pulling the levers. Also worth noting, we had Gage and Dan doing some of the robotic camera work in the background there as well. So thank you to them. And yeah, hopefully we will see you for the next launch from the Cape, which is scheduled to be Thursday at 9:34 p.m. Keep an eye out on Next Spaceflight in case that changes for the Kuiper KF-03 mission. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I've been your host for today's flight. And until next time, have a great one, everybody.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, with planet.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Echo down to nominal.
Flight downside FTE off. Say again, FTE off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god! Décollage.
Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You bet. We don't need any more of these.